I am recording this, everybody, so you will be able to have this recording. But first of all, I want to welcome you to 2019. Happy New Year. This is our first virtual office hours of the year, and I think we are kicking it off on a great foot. We have, after this call, about 357 days to execute on Nitya's great guidance and advice. And Nitya, I am so thrilled to have you here to help discuss with us strategies around kickstarting 2019 sales. So awesome to have you. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of the clients from Stride. And I think there was a good UCLA Anderson contingent that signed up for these office hours too. So awesome. Thank you all so much. A couple of things before we get started, just on housekeeping. When Nitya is doing a little bit of presentation, my suggestion is to put your call on mute. So that will be a little less distracting, but do not keep it on mute when you have a question. Remember, this is virtual office hours. This is not virtual one-to-many presentation. So please interrupt Nitya, break in, ask questions. That's what this is all about. If for whatever reason you're a little gun shy about speaking directly, you can ask the question in chat, but I'd prefer you didn't. Up to you. Okay, next housekeeping thing is just connectivity. I happen to be out of the country right now. My connection's pretty good. If it goes out, stay on. I'll dial back in, but it should be fine. Okay, can everybody hear me now? Like, can I get one yes?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. This is great. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, but one thing really quick. Who wants to grow sales this year? I mean, I think we all do. And if you were making a choice between managing your back office and growing sales, would anyone prefer to be managing their back office this year, bookkeeping, accounting? Yeah, right, exactly. Nobody. And so just so you know, that's why Stride exists. That's why I am an owner of this business, because we are experts at running bookkeeping, accounting, and HR. So you can focus on moving your business forward faster. Oh, there's a little bit of background noise, so I put it on mute, whoever just joined. So why do we do these office hours on topics other than bookkeeping and accounting? It's because we're in the business of helping our clients build better, stronger, more durable businesses. We are doing our job if we are bringing tools and services to you to help you grow your enterprise, and we want to manage that back office to keep you in your genius zone. So to that end, I want to pass it over to Nitya to kick off for our first virtual office hours of the year on Kickstarting 2019 sales. Guys, this is supposed to be a ton of fun. My hope is that this is your best meeting, best discussion of the day. Let's rock and roll.
Thank you very much, Russell. And I recognize some of the names on the list this morning, and I don't think there's a shyness problem with those folks who have joined so far. Thanks again. Good morning. You know, I've trained a few thousand people across half a dozen countries, range of industries, and there's one consistent thing that stands out. The top salespeople are always looking to learn more, for ways to find an edge to stay ahead. So I'm going to assume that many of you are in that category, and kudos for those who are striving to get to that level. Again, from the list of attendees, I think there are people who are in one-person organizations all the way to 5,000 plus size, a lot of B2B, but also some B2C businesses. Revenues in the ranges from thousands to billions, and some people are individual producers, some people are leading teams, and some people are player coaches. So there's a variety of folks, and we're going to try and make this relevant for everyone to the degree that we can. The purpose, again, of our time today is to leave each of you with at least one idea that you can put into effect right away to kickstart your year. We call this 3x3 of sales because we're going to talk about the 3 key elements of sales and touch on 3 ideas within those 3 elements. The tool I'm going to share is it's a simple 5-minute tool that can help you have more success in your next meeting. Almost guarantee. I'm not in financial services, so I can pretty much guarantee stuff. Guaranteed you'll have a better next sales meeting from that 5-minute exercise. And we'll have a lot of time for Q&A. I think there were a couple of questions people asked at registration, and hopefully we can, there's a lot of smart people and experienced salespeople amongst us. We can provide some value to folks who have some questions, and then we'll close at the end of that. Sound good?
Sounds awesome. And by the way, anybody who's not on mute, you might want to just put it on mute for the first part of this. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Nitya. Thanks.
Great. You know, when it comes down to it, there's basically 3 elements of sales. It's speaking to the right people, the right prospects, customers, maximizing every interaction that you're having, whether it's a phone call or a face-to-face meeting or an email, and thirdly, doing it enough. And this framework is a good opportunity for you if you're trying to think about your own sales. Sometimes it's not easy to fix everything or make improvements across the board. This is a good place to start. And where is there an opportunity to make some incremental improvements? And certainly if you're leading an organization or leading a team, this might be a framework where you can think about where's the best place to start, make some improvements. So as it relates to, are you speaking to the right people? The 3 points on this topic that I want to talk about are, and generally this is a question around resource and efficiency maximization. Time is one of our most valuable resources, and for most people, money is also not unlimited. So maximizing where we're using our time and money as it relates to getting in front of the right people is a critical element that you want to continue to optimize and think about. When we think about this topic, I think about the right companies, the right people at those companies, and how do you get in front of them? What I mean when I say the right company, this is almost a strategic type of thinking. And there's some external factors that you consider, some internal factors that need to be considered. If you're working in an industry where your clients, that industry is growing, it's a good place to be, because even if you maintain your share, the pie is getting bigger and you're going to be in a good position. I think about if your clients are in the wireless Wi-Fi router business with 5G and with everyone moving, cutting cable and just streaming internet in their houses and having multiple routers, if they were your customers, if they were your targets, it's a good place to be because their business is growing. Likewise, if possible, you try and avoid industries that are having a challenge growing because you're just fighting that battle uphill. So as you think about who are the right companies that you should be targeting, what segment makes the most sense for you, if it's not clear, then think about the external factors that make the most sense. Internally, you want to think about your passions, your strengths as a team, your relationships, and really identify who are the right, what's the right industry or company that you want to target. On the right people level, a couple of years ago, or rather, when I got started in sales consulting, I was working with a lot of large companies, the PIMCOs, the Googles, the MetLifes. And in those businesses, we often interacted with learning and development folks. They were part of the proposal process and, coordinating the activities. And so I had the idea of trying to outreach to learning and development people at other large companies. And what I realized in doing that was those folks were generally not empowered to do things that were different or away from the norm. they were not incentivized to take a more customized approach that probably cost the company money in the hopes that would yield higher sales. That's not what they were really compensated for. And in having these conversations, I realized, sure, they might be involved if I work with those companies, but that's not where my point of entry or my sale needs to be. It needed to be at the leadership level, at the level where people had P&L responsibility. So as you think about, I'm going to target tech companies in the Bay Area, or I'm going to target, retailers in the Northeast, you really want to think about at those companies, what level do you need to be speaking at? Because sometimes we think, we think we have an in because we know someone at a company, but they're so far away from who is actually going to make a decision that it doesn't make sense to spend time reaching out or trying to get in front of those people.
Nitya,
so we really want to think about, are we spending our time focusing on the right people and the right, yeah, Russell, please.
Yeah, so that the hair stood up on the back of my neck because I know what it feels like to not get to the right person, but it's almost like I can't go around them now, having initiated with, unfortunately, the wrong person. So then it becomes like this political, like, brain damage of, shoot, I misfired. Now what do I do? What's your experience there?
Yeah, that's an interesting position to be in. I think, a couple of things. One, I give, if I'm reaching out to, if I've started engaging with a contact and they're not helpful enough or moving the ball forward, I think I give them the out, right? Hey, I know, I've appreciated our conversations. I want to not put this burden on you, so I'm going to try to reach out to this person directly, see if they have some time, or ask for permission. Or if you don't decide to ask for permission, that it's very situation dependent, and you just reach out to the next person. You can mention, I've been speaking with Joe. I thought this might be something you'd be interested in discussing as well. Can we set out 15 minutes to talk about this? So you're not kind of going behind people's backs necessarily.
Yeah.
You're trying to make it easier for them by selling within the company. And so many decisions in larger organizations are made as a team. You want to try and find a champion, but in some cases you need multiple stakeholders to be on board.
Yeah.
You got to work different angles.
Yeah. Thanks.
But in the future now, you won't start with the wrong person.
Yeah, right. Of course. Never again, I'm sure.
Well, once you've identified, okay, these are the companies I want to speak with, this is the level of person within those companies I want to speak with, now it's your job to go ahead and make contact and try and get in front of them. Obviously, there's many different ways. There's not one right way. It depends on a lot of factors, your industry, your network, the type of product or service you're selling. So consider the different ways, and those ways are increasing drastically. Each day there's more ways of outreach. The easiest outreach is obviously the inbound, because if someone calls you, that's 100% conversion that you're going to be able to speak with them. Obviously, introductions and referrals tend to have a higher conversion. And obviously in some businesses, and depending on how many customers or targets you're trying to outreach, colder methods such as cold calls, emails, all make sense as well. I would say where possible, if you can identify the highest conversion rate activity that makes the most sense, spend your time and resources there. If, again, assuming time and money are limited, that's where you might want to spend your time and resources. when it comes to that introduction and referral, and I think someone had asked the question around, reaching out to my network and trying to get introductions. There are a couple of ideas around this that I think are important. One, try and be as specific as possible for the help you're looking for. Really outline who the person is, why that person would benefit from a conversation with you. So, if you're, for example, a financial advisor and you ask a friend, hey, do you know any rich people? At that moment, it's hard, we all know rich people, but it's hard to think of someone in mind or think about why would I want to make an introduction for this person. But if you, reach out to someone and say, I've worked with a lot of executives that have made money in IPOs lately, and what they've found is that a 15-minute conversation really gives them a good open view on some of their options. And I know you speak with, I know you're in this circle at the UCL alumni. Are there 2 or 3 folks within that group that might benefit from a conversation with me? So you try to make it as specific as possible. And the person who's going to make the introduction should feel good that I'm helping both the person I'm introducing as well as the person I'm introducing them to. So that's your job as a salesperson, to make that clear in the introducer's mind how this is going to help both people. Does that make sense? Just nod if it does. The other idea that I don't see this happening enough, if I ever want an introduction to someone, I always send them a blurb for them to edit and send on my behalf. That does a couple of things. One, it doesn't mean more work or a lot more work for the person making the introduction. Two, I have a little more control over what they're going to say in that introduction. And 3, again, it increases the chances that they're actually going to do it. So the next time you're asking someone for an introduction and they say, yeah, sure, I can do that, offer to send them and send them, hey, here's a quick blurb. Feel free to edit it as you'd like and send it along. It will increase the number of requests you make that get addressed. Around getting to the right people, I'm curious from this group, I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn from folks who have these B2B lead generation companies, and it's, no risk. I've never really responded, but has anyone here used any of those services? Has it worked? Has it not worked? I just open it up if anyone, I assume you all get those messages.
I'm currently using one called Hello Outreach, and it's email, and we run campaigns and measure conversion through those campaigns. The intention of the campaign is to drive one of 2 things: either the hope for a conversation, like yes, I'm interested, or what I call a micro conversion. So a micro conversion is, will this person take an action in the email that evidences that I'm delivering them something of interest, like clicking through to download a free worksheet or a guide, or click to the blog post? And so what Hello Outreach does effectively is they help me build my target audience, and then they distribute my email en masse, right, critical mass, that allows me to see relatively quickly kind of what's working and what isn't. It's an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
It's an experiment.
Good. And I think one of the questions also, when you're trying to think about what are the ways to outreach, almost comes down to what are you trying to achieve? How many clients or customers is right for you? If you're selling shoes, you want more customers. That's not the limiting factor. If you're a consultant, you got a small consulting company, your limit might be 5 or 6 large clients in a year. So you don't really want a pipeline of 500, and you wouldn't know what to do with them. You wouldn't be able to service them. So don't spend the time or resource or money building up that list. Focus on the highest quality 5 or 6 companies that you want to close that for that year. Regardless of what approach you take, the one question that should be clear in your ask for someone's time is, why is this worth their time? And if just a simple self-check, when you send an email or you write an email, put yourself in their shoes and say, is it clear why this would be worth their time if I'm in their position? So we want to try and speak to the right people. That's where we start. The second key element we want to talk about is the right type of conversation. Is it a more positive emotion to buy or to be sold to? We never go to our friends and say, look at this car that the salesperson just sold me. Or look at this CPA, I just got this CPA who persuaded me to use his services. That's not a feeling of pride. Buying is a feeling of pride. Look at this car I just bought. Oh, I just switched CPAs. I'm really happy with who I'm with now. So how can we, through every part of our conversation, create this buying conversation? There are 3 key ideas around this element of sales that I want to talk about. The first one is the importance of process. Secondly, the need to understand emotions and the behavioral science element. And thirdly, we'll spend some time working together on that tool that I mentioned that's going to improve the quality of these conversations. So first, around process. My first sales job was right out of business school 16 years ago. I was in pharmaceutical sales, and in the first couple of months, they had me ride along with a few different experienced sales reps to see how they did their job. And there was this gentleman called Frank Shahzadi. And Frank had been a rep for 25, 30 years, consistently in the top 10, 15% of the territory of the region every single year. And Frank was an interesting guy, and he said, I'm not the smartest salesperson, so I really have to rely on my process. Turns out that Frank was pretty smart, and this works for smart people as well. So we're driving in his car, pull up to a doctor's office. Every single office started the same way. Good morning, how are you, Kathy? He'd usually know their name, and they'd smile and go, oh, we're good, Frank, how are you? Oh, it's another day in paradise. And they'd smile and laugh, oh, Frank, you always say that. And that was part of his brand, and that was part of his process. But every single office we went into heard that it's another day in paradise for Frank Shahzadi. Similarly, when he got to meet the doctors, we got inside past the gatekeepers, Frank was diligent about succinctly recommunicating the features and benefits of the drugs every single time. Some of the other reps told me, the doctor already prescribes this, so I don't need to rehash what it does again. But Frank had his process, and he was going to succinctly communicate those features and benefits. This came full circle to me a couple of years ago, working with a dental supply company. They have a team of about 30 reps, 30,000 customers around the country. And we did this campaign where we were calling customers who had previously been purchasing one of their main cement and had stopped purchasing their cement. So we were calling those clients up, those doctors up, and finding out, why they left and would they be willing to switch back. And a lot of the doctors told them, I switched to this other brand because the other brand has a self-etching formula that saves me one step and saves me time. Do you know which other cement had a self-etching formula that saves them time? It was the one that this company was selling that they stopped buying. But the reps had stopped repeating those features and benefits. They'd stopped communicating the value to those customers. They'd gotten in a habit of just calling and saying, do you want to reorder? Do you want to reorder this? It's time for a reorder. And they'd forgot to communicate those features and benefits. So it's never, it's not our client's job to remember why we're better than the competition or why they should stay with us. We got to prove it with our work, but we also have to continue to reinforce those ideas, because if we're not doing it, our competition is going to. Again, the key point here is you want to be flexible with your process, and if you're running a large sales organization, you want to build flexibility into the process to account for different personalities, but it's really critical to have a consistent process so that you can have more buying conversations versus selling conversations. The second point that I mentioned was that humans decide on emotion and rationalize on logic. We've all bought that slightly more expensive shirt or car or trip, and it's not because and we've decided to do that based on emotion, and we rationalize it on logic. Oh, it was a good deal, it was on sale, you don't get this quality at this price normally. But the decision was, man, I look good in that shirt, I'm gonna buy it. And our customers are doing the same thing. Most of the time, it's humans making buying decisions, and emotions matter as much, if not more, than logic does. There are really only 6 reasons why anyone buys anything. And we call these the 6 buying motives. Possibility of gain, fear of loss, comfort and convenience, security or protection, pride of ownership, and the 6th one is satisfaction of emotion. It's a little more all-encompassing, but the idea is it's an emotional gratification that they're getting by making this purchasing decision. So as you think about your sales process, are you considering these buying motives in that when you're asking for a meeting, when you're having an initial call or meeting, how are you incorporating the emotional element of where your clients or prospects are and not just the logical facts and figures? The third part is around preparation. I do a fair amount of traveling in my role, and this story dates back a few years ago. I was in the middle of a series of a lot of business trips, and I normally have a packing list. I have a 2-day packing list and a 3-day packing list, depending on the length of my trip, and I just check the list off and go through and do my packing. Works out pretty well. So a couple years ago, I was in the middle of a lot of travel, and I figured I don't need to use my list. I've been on the road every few days. I know what I need to put in my bag. And I had a trip from LA to New York, and from there I was flying to Toronto. When I got to New York and it was time to check in for my Toronto flight the next day, I realized that my passport was in my apartment in Los Angeles. And turns out you need a passport to get to Canada. I called a buddy of mine who had a spare key for my apartment. He said, yeah, I can get you the passport, but FedEx, the last FedEx time. So in a desperate situation, I reached out to the Anderson network asking if anyone was somehow flying on the red eye from LA to New York that night. And a guy from the 2004 class, John Baudino, who I think had signed up for this. I don't know if you're on, John, or not, but he passport from my friend. I picked it up from him the next day and saved me a very uncomfortable situation with the client. I do not skip that preparation step on further business trips. It's just not worth it. There's a best version of ourselves, and there's a lot of different tools that we can use so that at every opportunity, this best version of ourselves shows up. in business to business, the sales cycles can be long, and it's not a how do I close the sale or how do I make that ask for the business that often impacts whether that business closes or whether you can shorten that sales cycle. It's everything that happens along that point. It's so necessary to be prepared for every single meeting that we have. I'll pause for 30 seconds here. If you could all, well, actually, first of all, are there any questions so far?
Questions or experiences or examples or issues that people are facing or challenges in the sales process?
Okay, we'll keep going. So I'll pause for 30 seconds now.
What about, so it's Jonathan here. I think there's challenges with, how are you?
Good.
One of the things that I'm struggling with right now is I've been negotiating a contract with somebody where I feel like I've been negotiating against myself because they haven't really given me feedback, but they're saying, no, don't want to do that, but they don't want to tell you what they can do. So it's just been kind of dragging on. At the same time, making believe they want to work with me. So I'm trying to figure out what the right push and pull is, but I want to get something signed, and I don't want to start, working without a contract of any kind. So it's really kind of a, what do you do in those situations?
Yeah. Do you? I guess we can address this right here. Do you know who is the decision maker? Is it a one-person decision-making team, or is it multiple stakeholders that need to decide?
It's multiple, and I've reached out to all of them, and they're all okay with moving forward, but they don't want to. They haven't put anything. They don't want to sign anything in writing yet. So I think it could be beyond me, but is that something that a lot of people have, or is that a challenge that a lot of people are having? And what do you do with that situation?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have we have good meetings, we have good conversations, and getting things over the finish line can be a challenge. Do you know how important is it for them to get this work started?
So that's the key, right? So that's the negotiation piece, is that I think they're a lot more comfortable working without a contract and just kind of flying by the seat of their pants than I am. And that is really the rub. And I think that's really where they're bringing me in, partly because I have the rigor and the kind of the methods, right? But at the same time, they enjoy flying by the seat of their pants. So I think that's probably the challenge. And I'm trying to figure out different creative ways to get them to at least just sign something rather than just ping me until they don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, I don't know the full situation, but if you can think about, is there a way to shorten the risk they feel by signing, or reduce the risk they feel by signing the contract, whether that's to get it, a shorter contract, just so that they get in the habit of signing a contract with you?
That's a good one. Maybe it is length. Yeah, we can do that.
And do they respond? Do you have access to respond to them? I mean, do they at least return your phone calls? Can you have a phone call with them?
I actually see them every day. I see them because I'm working with them right now, and I have a contract with them now, but it's expiring at the end of this month, and so I'm trying to get the renewal contract signed for February and on. So it's just one of those things where, I've just been trying to, and we've been talking about things since November on what they want to do with this next wave of work. But, I think there's also a lot of dynamics with them between each other. So it's complicated. I'm just trying to get I'm just trying to be as creative as possible, and I think maybe it is duration that I could play with. I don't know. But anyways, I'm sorry, not to.
No, we can take this offline after.
I was curious what your experiences were. So.
Yeah, again, in different situations, the answer is different. I think sometimes we, in your situation, you have access to them, so it's different. In some situations, the client is sitting on the proposal or sitting on the contract for a period of time, and you're wondering what they're thinking. And the key is really to try and understand where on their priority list does this sit? What is their decision-making process internally? And then if, at some point, if you're not getting any traction, sometimes people react when you take something away from them. So I don't know what your other options are of who else you might have a contract with, but that sometimes gets people to sign things pretty quickly. They might lose you. So again, another reason that when we're busy to keep our sales efforts, development moving forward. Let me now talk you guys through this tool that I've talked about, is meeting preparation template. So take 30 seconds by yourselves and just think about a specific meeting that you have coming up with a prospect or a client. I'm going to assume it could be a phone call, it could be a face-to-face, but sometime in the next 2 weeks, you're going to plan on having this conversation, this meeting with a prospect or client. Write down the specific meeting that you're thinking about for 15, I'll take 15 seconds to write that down. All right. Who'd let's hear. I see people's names. Franklin, are you on the call? Sign up. All right. I'll just ask for volunteers.
Hey, Nitya,
anyone?
Yeah. Nitya, I'm on.
Sure.
Sorry, I was unmuted. It took me a second to reach out to my phone.
No worries. Franklin, what meeting do you have in mind to do some preparation for?
A few of them. You want me to name the specifics?
Yeah, just pick one meeting. You're meeting with a client or a prospect.
Yeah, I'm meeting a client in the next 2 weeks. A hedge fund.
Okay. So you got a face-to-face meeting with that client or prospect. Again, this will be more beneficial. You're going to use this time to do some actual preparation if it's a specific meeting. So hopefully everyone on the call can think about specific meeting that they have coming up. So if you look on this template, some of these ideas are pretty easy and self-explanatory. Some of them will take a little bit of time to talk through. So the background, the research, that's obviously part of meeting preparation. The next line after that, what is the desired outcome of this meeting? What I mean by this is when you leave that meeting and you're giving your colleague a high five, or if it's by yourself, you're giving yourself a high five, what would have happened? What is true in this particular meeting? And we talk about long sales cycles. Obviously, the end goal is we got the contract, we got a sale, but usually that's not always the goal of every single meeting that we're having along the sales process. In some cases, it will be. But thinking about this meeting that you've written down that you're thinking about, just write down what is the desired outcome for that meeting. When that meeting ends, what's success? Give you 10 seconds to think about that. Franklin, I'm gonna call on you since you're still on unmute.
Sure.
For this meeting that you have coming up. What's success?
Yep. Success with them would be them committing to, they're looking to do some additional work, some integration, and look at a few new tools. Success would be them committing to some of it. They're already an existing client, so success here is a much higher bar than a
Sure.
normal prospect.
Okay. So it could be reasonable that in this meeting they'll say, "This sounds good. Send us the contract. We're committed."
Yes.
Okay, good.
Or at least move in that direction. Start talking numbers and playing around with numbers.
Okay. And then that's the differentiation, right? In some cases, it's if they are willing to set up a meeting or a call to talk specific numbers, that's success for this next meeting that you're having. Or they're willing to talk right then, that's success, and we have a next call or next step. So it's important for you to think about what that next step and desired outcome is for each different meeting. In some cases, it's a first introductory meeting. You know, the desired outcome might be they want to have a second call in the next 3 months, or the desired outcome is they're willing to set up a meeting with their senior stakeholder and myself in the future. Often we shoot ourselves in the foot when we try and overdo it. We think that the desired outcome is to set up a next call, but once we're in that meeting, we start trying to sell them the whole enterprise, and that gets people pausing and not wanting to respond to emails or sign the contract because they were not ready for that. And if you had thought about it in advance, that's not what's right for this meeting anyway. So think about the desired outcome. The second line there is the purpose. This is the client-centric version of desired outcome. What is the purpose of this meeting from the client's point of view? If you had to give them a one sentence, "Thank you for your time. The purpose of this meeting is dash," and that purpose gets them excited about the rest of that meeting, what is that purpose? So the difference between desired outcome is they're committed to doing more work for us. From the client standpoint, that's not as beneficial for them as the result of that work. So the purpose of this meeting is to understand how we can further your risk capabilities in 2019. The purpose of this meeting is to understand how we can work together to drive your sales initiatives in 2019. So that purpose needs to be separate from the desire. There's obviously overlap, but going to a client and saying the purpose of this meeting is to get you to sign a new contract is not going to make them want to buy. It's going to make them feel sold to. So the next step beyond after that is on the template is about call openings, meeting openings. When I've coached people, we often spend a disproportionate amount of time on the openings of meetings because it's so important for that opening to go well. It establishes credibility. It's also the area we can have the most control over. Sometimes it happens in minute 30 of a 1 hour meeting or minute 12 of a 30-minute meeting, but we somehow have more control over how am I going to start this meeting off. And there are a few different elements that go into that. We can spend a couple of hours actually working on effective ways to open meetings, and we're not going to do that right now, but certainly think about for this meeting that you have coming up, what's the best way to open up that meeting? The next area is around, obviously you'll have some discussion with the clients. Last month I was in an Uber, and sometimes I chat with my Uber driver, sometimes I don't. This time he was extra chatty, and he found out what I did. He said, can you give me, what's the one sales advice or one piece of advice you could give me for being an effective salesperson? And I had to think about it for a little while, and I said, the best salespeople, the people that are most effective, are able to ask the best questions. They're able to ask questions that get clients to answer, that get the right types of information from those clients. If you think about an average sales meeting that you have, how many questions do we actually get a chance to ask? I'll wait for some volunteers. Like, thinking about your average client meeting or prospect meeting, how many questions do you really get a chance to ask over the course of that meeting? Let's hear some suggestions in your experience.
I feel like an effective meeting, it's Jonathan here. I feel like an
Yes,
effective meeting allows for questions the entire time. Like I enjoy asking someone a question and then having it be dynamic from there, because you know what your objectives are, and you know the 3 things you want to get across are, or you should have 3, or in my opinion, I usually have 3 things I want to get across. And I don't know, if you're asking the right questions, you can try to, maybe you might want to, you can customize your spiel over time, but it's just one of those things that I feel like the whole dialogue should be questioned. So I don't know. It's an interesting question that you asked.
I agree with you. I think meetings are best when they're two-way and there's dialogue. And obviously you're doing a good job if you're having meetings that able to ask a lot of questions, right? I mean, that's the ideal. That's where we're trying to be. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But again, thinking about an average meeting, you're going to go meet a prospect for the first time, or this is an early meeting with someone. And again, sometimes your ask has been, hey, let me come tell you how we can help your business. And they say, sure, come tell me how you can help my business. But we decide to ask questions instead. Sometimes there's a limit to how many we're able to ask, right? Anyone else want to share how many questions they ask in an average sales meeting? This is a shy group for salespeople. When I ask this question in groups, the answer we often get, and again, it depends on the type of business, is we get to ask between 2 and 4 questions, 3 and 5 questions. Beyond that, it starts seeming intrusive, and it doesn't need to be. To Jonathan's point, it's great when there's questions throughout, but we've got 3 to 4 opportunities to ask some really good questions, and we may never get a second opportunity or a next meeting with this client. And being able to choose those 3 to 4 best questions to ask enhances our ability to shorten sales cycles. So for this next meeting that you're going to, and even if this is an existing client, what are 3 to 4 really good questions that make sense for you to ask them? And again, depending on the stage of client, when we're talking about, we don't know why they're not signing the contract. We don't know why they are stalling on responding when we've sent them a contract. The answers were probably available if we had asked those right questions earlier on in our meetings. So again, for that specific meeting you're thinking about, what are 3 to 4 good questions you would ideally like to ask throughout the course of that meeting? I'll pause for a minute so you can jot those down for yourself.
And we'll make this form available on the site if you're open to that, Nitya, for people to download.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And just time checking, Nitya, we have about 8 minutes.
Okay. So let's move through this quicker. Again, the questions are important. The other area on this form I'd like to highlight, the potential objections. When we've had multiple meetings, we know the questions that keep coming up from clients, whether it's around our capabilities, whether it's around our track record, whether it's around our pricing. We generally know those main questions, so we want to be really ready for them. And lastly, those next steps. I like to have a plan A and plan B. Plan A, we set up a meeting to discuss numbers. Plan B, we set up a meeting to, that is a similar context, but with more decision makers involved. But either way, it's good to think about, okay, if things go according to plan, here's where I want to exit. If things are okay, but not quite at that level, here's my plan B. Try and have a specific exit step, and these usually connect to that desired outcome. They connect to that, here's what success would look like. So that's the second element of sales. The third element of sales is, are we doing it enough? There's this book out, Grit, that I think has been, and that theme has been trending. I've never seen a salesperson who's at the top of their game, who's also not at the top 20% of activity. So working hard, working smart are not mutually exclusive. Generally, you need to be doing these activities enough times to have success. I do want to pause for questions. The one big point I want to make around here, again, for yourselves and for the teams you're leading, is to focus on the behaviors, or what we call the leading indicators, more than the lagging indicators or the results. Now, if you told me there are 2 groups of salespeople, 10 of them have 30 meetings a week and the other 10 have 40 meetings a week, I'm sure there are some people in that 30 group that are exceptional, but I'm going to put my money on the folks having 40 meetings a week. So calls, meetings, these are the activities that lead to success. So thinking about, for your business, what are the activities that if you're doing regularly will lead to success? You have more control over that than the actual outcome sometimes. So I'm going to pause and open it up for any other questions that people may have.
I'm going to share a couple of quick experiences. Number one, we have built a points system in our business where people that are in a sales capacity receive certain points for meetings, emails, LinkedIn, face-to-face, contract signed. We've actually gamified the sales process and made it pretty fun. And so people are pretty motivated because of the point system. That's number one. Number two, the only thing we care about really is how many meetings are we having a week. You can send as many emails out as you want, but unless you're talking to the person, we really don't put that much credit on anything other than meetings. So our golden metric, choosing the golden metric of number of meetings for us is that thing that we look at every day, every week, every month by person. That's not really my question. That's just a comment. My question is, Nitya, when do you walk away? When do you walk away? When do you say, you know what, I've been at this with this customer for long enough. I'm compromising my own standards. Like, I need to walk away. It feels like walking away is super hard because we've sunk so much time into the opportunity. What's your rule of thumb on a filter for walking away?
Great question. I think one thing we want to understand is that, yes, there are sales cycles and then there are buying cycles. When something is a priority enough for our clients and customers or prospects, that's when we want to be there with the best proposition for them. We want to always try and think about, are they saying no, or are they saying not now? Because the not now part is a problem for us. We feel angst because we've done the work and we want to get this going and we want to sign the contract. They're not necessarily feeling that same level of angst. It's just not at the top of their priority list at the moment. So the question you always want to consider is it a no, I don't want to do business with you, or no, this is not high enough on my priority list at this very moment. So you always want to understand that element and be so you want to continue to stay in front of clients, but understand that's the decision on quitting or sticking it out is if you can figure out which one of those two situations it is. And in some cases, if you've got a good relationship, you can ask that client. And I've asked clients, listen, we've gone this far. Let me know if this is not a priority at this moment, and we can table this. And sometimes they appreciate that out and saying, yeah, you know what, first half of the year we're working on new CRM and working on this. Can we revisit that? And now you know it's not me. It's just this was not a priority at the right time. The other idea around that comes to me from, I'm a happily married man now, but when I was in the other sales business of in the dating world, you just fill up your pipeline. You care less about the one girl that didn't call you back if you've got 8 other numbers on your list. So you start thinking less about this one prospect that hasn't signed the deal because you're so busy with more meetings and discussions and people that do want to sign a deal because the timing is right. That's the solution to that problem for salespeople.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Got it. We have time for one more question, then we're 60 minutes up, so we're going to wrap. One more question.
Yeah, there was a question that come in advance around I send proposals and then I don't hear back on their emails.
Yeah.
I don't know if that person's on or still on, but again, I would say that there's not a problem with the proposal. It's possibly a problem or the issues come up in that discussion. Have you really understood? Have you got them to a place where they want that proposal? And what I mean is really want that proposal, not just accept your offer of sending a proposal. I don't send a lot of proposals until it's almost clear we're going to be doing something. So I think sometimes salespeople are eager to get proposals out, but get the client involved in building that proposal, in building the plan. I'll sometimes do an email draft and I'll say, if this sounds good, we can put some numbers around it, or here's how I generally charge. So don't be in a rush to send proposals out until you understand how much of a priority this is for them, what's their buying decision-making process internally, what's their budgeting process. Then it makes more sense to send a proposal.
Yeah. Nitya, unfortunately, we are out of time. This has been fantastic. Here's my takeaway. My takeaway is that sales is not gunslinging. Sales is discipline. Sales is process. When you build a system and work the system and control those elements that you can control, you will get output. You need to put enough into the system so that you have sufficient output, i.e. closed deals, right, to meet your goals for the year. But assuming that you know how to talk to the right person, assuming that you have a method for how to engage them, building a disciplined system and process is what separates great salespeople from average salespeople. When you are not selling, but you are helping somebody buy. That's my takeaway. And it's powerful. And I'm grateful for you sharing that.
Thank you very much, Russell, and for everyone that was here. Again, if I'll have that template available if anyone's interested. It's a writable PDF, so you can type out the information and print it out before your meetings. My email is there if you have further questions. Obviously, if you use any of these ideas, I would love to get an email or hear how that went. That would be ideal. And Russell, you mentioned you have an AASV.
Oh yes, my acronym AASV is always add selfless value. Always add selfless value. Give of yourself. Be grateful for the opportunity to engage with that person. Appreciate everything that they are doing to enable you to do what you do best. and add selfless value. Don't always be looking to close your product or service, because sometimes if you're not lined up with their buying cycle, you're going to miss an opportunity to continue building rapport and relationship. That's AASV. Always add selfless value. This presentation is going to be up on our site. I will draft a short blog around it, and I will talk to Nitya about creating a downloadable form for the preparation guide. Our next virtual office hours is on January 23rd, where Michelle Baumberger from Equinox Law Group is going to be talking about how enterprises, small to mid-sized enterprises, can mitigate business risk through having the right entity set up, the right contracts in place, and the right insurance coverage to make sure that they can focus on building their business and not worried about the risks that are sitting around the corner. So look out for an invitation from that. Nitya, thank you so much again. Everybody, with 357 days left in the year, I am hopeful and excited that your sales year is an absolute success. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day. Thanks, Nitya.
Thank you, guys.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.